Hello. I'm making a video to show you how I magnetized my WarCry terrain in order to make them modular, and we would be able to put them together in whichever way we wanted, depending on the terrain setup or terrain card that we decided to use. So it took a lot of trial and error in order to get these the way that I wanted them to be, and you can see I tried a couple different methods, and this is the one that ended up working best for me. So let me put these over to the side and show you what I used. So the first thing is the type of magnet. I used 5mm ball magnets or ball bearing magnets. I don't know what they call them, spherical magnets. And these are the 5mm kind. They do sell 2.5mm, but I do not think that 2.5mm will be big enough or strong enough to be able to hold the walls together under their own weight. It might work, but I'm not sure. I know that the 5mm works. So I had the 5mm ball magnets. I'm gonna get the magnets away for they don't attract other things like they just did. A hobby knife, scissors, a drill bit. Pretend it's not attached to a drill. I cheated a little bit and used the power drill. You can do it by hand, but it is a lot easier with a power drill. Here's the bit. Ta-da! It's got plastic on it still. And a hot glue gun. This is a really old one. My husband taped the cord on because he got mad at it falling off all the time. But I used a low heat setting on the hot glue gun because the high heat can be a little too hot. It can kind of like flow in places you don't want it to flow into. And then the plastic. I just used bits and pieces that I use the scissors for to cut strips and little bits and pieces out of in order to create the little windows that are on the edges of the walls that we'll use to attach and to place our magnets in. And the type of plastic that I did end up using were these. These are like those meal prep containers. You can buy like a package of 50 of them on Amazon. We use them for a lot of things around the house. They're really nice for using for storage and stuff like that. I don't know if we've ever used one for food, but I think that's what they're meant, like what they're advertised for is food prepping. Anyway, so I did try using different types of magnets. These are 2mm by 3mm little guys that I use to connect like arms and stuff. Not arms. The 2mm by 1mm or more for the arms, but these just were not strong enough. They may have been strong enough if their poles were aligning, but even if I did take like one or two of them and I put them in the compartments rather than the ball magnets, they wanted to do that instead, where they were kind of joining by their sides rather than their poles, and there just was not enough strength for the magnets to be able to hold nicely side to side rather than pole to pole, and so that was really frustrating. It took quite a lot of trial and error just to figure out that it just wasn't going to work. So anyway, what I did, let me find, here it is. I first took my drill bit and I drilled actually by hand. I don't know why I'm doing this with my left hand. I'm not left-handed. I drilled into this corner here on one of the walls, and you can see I tried to go in as much as a 45-degree angle as I could. It is possible, and I did practically all of the ones that I showed you by hand right here, and I only did it on the top ones because the bottom ones, this space right here is a lot bigger than the space right here. So the top part is the only part that kind of needed a little extra help with getting the ball bearing recessed enough into this area for it wasn't going to go over the top and protrude out of this plane, because if anything protruded out of this plane right here, the two edges won't meet up nicely, they would kind of have like a little bit of a gap, and we didn't want a gap. We wanted them to be nice and neat. So anything that I put in here, I needed to make sure that it was recessed and nothing protruded above this plane right here. So by hand, I did drill out a little cubby for it, and it is possible. It just took a while, so I'm gonna go get the powder drill. It's right here. Boom. And again, keeping it at a 45. Don't go too gung-ho on it. No guns a-blazing here. You just need to go slow. It will be a really difficult thing to try to patch a hole in the other side to try to fix a mistake if you went straight through. And also, I like my cutting mat, so I don't want to ruin it any more than it already is. Should be good enough. Now, all I'm doing is just creating enough of a little bit of a kind of nest, enough of a little divot there to be able to hold the ball bearing, which is right here. Hold the ball bearing in place and to prevent it from protruding above this plane right here. And you can see, hopefully, kind of maybe, see that it is inlaid enough for it's not going to give us problems when we join our pieces. So before I lose my bearing, I'm gonna stick it on my lamp, just get it out of the way. And I'm going to create a little window to place into here. And I actually have one that I cut, it's right here. And it does need to be trimmed a little bit, but I did put a little corner there, and then the top one, this part will keep it in on top. Kind of hard to see, sorry. This part here will keep it in on top, and then we just need to put a little wedge right here to, just in case the ball bearing falls out of that little groove we made it, and it will prevent it from falling down. It might never even happen, but just in case. Probably won't. I think it's stuck in there. So what I'm going to do is score on the fold, and I'm not cutting all the way through, I'm just cutting enough to be able to help fold it nicely and create a little bend like that. Now I did end up bending it a little bit too much. I heard it crack, but it might be okay. Might be okay. And let's see, I'm gonna try fitting it in. Actually, that worked really well. I don't think I'm gonna have to trim it at all. So with the ball bearing out of it, you might need to clean up a little bit in there. But with the ball bearing out, for it doesn't accidentally magnetize to the things that we're gonna use to hold this window in place, I'm going to hold it in. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't even need to look good, it just needs to work. I'm gonna put that flap in a little bit more. And because we made that little flap there, all I'm gonna need is just one bead of hot glue right there. And as it's drying, get the hot glue wisps away. As it's drying, I'm going to take my hobby knife and kind of just make sure that it's drying in an okay position and that it's not standing too proud of this plane right here. This is another reason why you don't want the magnet in there, otherwise the magnet would stick to the hobby knife. And that's good. It should be dry enough. I'm gonna open that up a little bit, like that. Grab my bearing and drop them in. Boop. And then take my glue gun, and I usually go for this little wedge right here, that little gap, and I'll glue a little bit in. And now it does stand proud, and that's fine. I'll be able to trim it with my hobby knife. But I do kind of want to force some of this hot glue in, but I don't want to force it in too much. I don't want it to, like, I don't want to squish it in for it's hitting the ball bearing. Because again, I want the ball bearing to be able to move freely. And you can see that it's moving around, hopefully. Always make sure that you confirm before you go too far that the magnet is able to move freely within the compartment before you apply too much glue. Otherwise, you're spending most of your afternoon peeling glue off. So this corner here, it will peel up with the strength of these magnets at least. So I do apply some here, and this is where it gets ugly no matter what I do, so it's just gonna look ugly. So I put a strip there, get my water, and kind of force it in a little bit. Again, still making sure that my bearing can move freely. Should get something better to help move that guy along. Oop. There you go. Oops. Cheap hobby knives. Okay, so this one was a little bit tight. I pushed it down a little bit too much, but I think that the magnets are going to be strong enough. I can wiggle it loose a little bit, but I don't want to go too much. It really doesn't matter. It seems to be moving. Yeah, it's definitely fine. So the bits of glue that are standing proud, I'll take care of by using a sharp hobby knife. Now this one was really cheap, so I'm actually gonna get my scalpel. I don't know why I have tons of scalpels, but I have tons of scalpels. So I just go and I use a kind of a sawing motion, keeping it as flat against the plane as I can, and just shaving it down until nothing stands proud of this plane right there. So for the bottom portion, yeah, there's a lot more wiggle room down here than there is up here. I don't need to drill anything, but I do need to cut a piece of plastic, and I think it's about just under 1/2 inch, it looks like. So what I do is I kind of measure, just eyeball it about there, a little bit higher, a little bit lower than the compartment. Okay, I don't know where that went. So we'll do another one right here, and this way. We'll do that. Because I can always trim it. So I want to be able to fold that one down, fold that end down, and create another one of those little envelope flap type things. So this might be a little bit too big, and I know it's not square, and I try to get them as square as I can. This one doesn't matter as much as the top one, whether or not one of the sides isn't square. Sorry. I forgot to apologize for the camera equipment. I have no experience with video. This is actually a portrait lens. This is a 50mm lens. I don't even know that's appropriate to use for a video. I've never made a video before, so sorry about the audio, sorry about the autofocus. I just don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing, and I am totally unprepared for making this, but I'm gonna try. So that looks like it will be okay. And I'm going to score either side, leaving enough room in between my score marks for the bearing to reside, but enough to be able to create those little corner flaps. So I scored it before I bend it. Easier for me to take the scissors and create that little angle for when I fold it in, it will go nicely into that space. It might be a little off. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. It does not need to look pretty. It just needs to work. And these work. At least I hope it will. Watch, it doesn't. Yeah, right, there we go. So, which side did I score? This side, okay. So, I scored this side, so I'm gonna bend away from it. So I'm bending right there. And you make a little, I don't know what you call this thing, I'm sure there's a word for it, but it's like a little table thing. Not a bad table, but seesaw? Who knows? Anyway, so spot fit it, see if it works. That looks pretty good to me. Put one bead, because we made these little triangles down here, these little angles, I can just put one bead of hot glue down here. Boop. Wait for it to dry a little bit. Make sure I don't push it too far out of the way. And then kind of fold it out. Get another bearing. Oops. And drop it in. Fold my flap down a little bit more. Take my glue gun again. Put another bead of hot glue right there. And because both of these had the flaps on either side, I only need 2 little bits of hot glue. While it dries, make sure that my bearing can move freely. And it does. Oh, there they are. And let it dry. It's not dry yet. Now, there is more to the WarCry walls than these corners here. There's actually these edges right here. So to get these to be able to be modular as well, I'm just going to use the same technique as I would if I was like attaching an arm or something. And I'm going to end up using these little it's so tiny, 2mm by 1mm magnets, and a, oh, they're so tiny, and a 2mm drill bit. And I'm just going to have one of the poles in the female and one in the male. So like males will be negative and the females will be positive. Who knows? So that way, grooves will always be one polarity. In the male segments will always be another polarity, and then that way I don't have to worry about things repelling each other, because these are always going to be in a specific orientation. These will always be a negative groove, and those will be positive male. Something like that. Anyway, that is it, and that is how I magnetize and how I intend on magnetizing these parts right here. And I'm sorry I'm out of camera space. It's gonna shut off on me soon. I don't have enough room on my card. This is how unprepared I am. Anyway, thank you. Bye.